Wonderful. Thank you, Nasscom, for the invite and privilege to be here. I think before I kind of bring in my co-panelist, very quick roundup. Like it was mentioned, the session is to explore the dynamic landscape of the overall deep tech and deep science, industry. I think what we all have been witnessing, of course, almost now we stand at the cusp of having 3,000 to 4,000 startups growing at a pace of almost 50% plus CAGR, year on year, when I talk about the deep tech strength. And as a country, as we continue to make, take significant sort of strides, the most recent one being Chandrayaan 3, I think, no matter how much we talk about it, the less it is with the capital efficiency that they've been able to do. I think the idea of this session was to kind of delve into the nuances, both from a challenges and opportunities perspective. Of course, we have all the VCs, so there's a little bit of a bias towards the VC lens. So with that, I'll, Rema from Ankur Capital and Girish from YourNest. Rema, Girish, before I delve deeper, may I request, like, if you can just take, 30 to 45 seconds to quickly introduce your fund. That'll be helpful.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and hi Abhishek, hi Rema. Glad to be here. So I represent YourNest. We are a deep tech focused fund based out of NCR. We've been around for 12 years now. We are now deploying from the third fund. For us, deep tech has two legs to it. One is this entire hardware leg around sensors, wearables, robotics, industrial IoT, semiconductors, and the likes. And on the software side, it's all about cutting edge technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, distributed ledger technologies, immersive technologies, and enterprise SaaS. So that's what we do. We are currently deploying from a third fund. We have a portfolio of about 27, 28 active companies. 24 of them would be considered as deep tech, with respect to the definition. And we've been doing this for the last 12 years now.
Wonderful. Maybe I'll quickly chime in and I'll give some more, breathing space to Rema while she reselects her connection. So we are Endiya Partners. I represent Endiya Partners. We are an early stage fund, again, fairly similar to, YourNest, as you would have heard from Girish. We come in at seed, pre-A, focus being around technology and healthcare. I would not say we are solely focused on deep tech and deep science, but deep tech and deep science form a very, very formidable section of our overall investments. I think we are currently operating out of our fund 2, made close to 25 plus odd investments. And Rema, back to you. If are you back? Can you help us just with a quick introduction?
Rema, you're on mute, I think.
I think you're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
No, can't hear her.
Yeah. Can't hear you, Rema.
You might want to log off and log back in, Rema.
Yeah, I think do that. In the interest of time, I probably jump on while once she comes back. I think we'll probably give her some space for a quick intro. Girish, let me then jump directly to the topic, right? I think if you look at of course, the deep tech investment has always been a fairly gray ocean to a lot of entrepreneurs out over there, right? And one of the core things that anybody or core curiosity that any entrepreneur has is what are the specific criteria that investor looks into, right? What's the investor lens while evaluating some of these deep tech startups? And let me try and probably also a little bit break this question down, right? So that it makes sense. So one is, while you guys are evaluating any new investment, what do you and how do you evaluate? That's one. Two is, are there certain different or nuances when you're looking at the deep tech companies and the startups? And third is when they kind of graduate and evolve and look for upstream capital, what your experience has been? How do the next upstream investors evaluate them? Because it takes a bit longer for the companies to reach to a certain critical mass from a revenue standpoint, customer standpoint, right? So yeah, if you can just maybe.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of stuff that we see typically, for us, deep tech would essentially mean some kind of IP. You know, without IP, it does not really make sense. So within the portfolio, for example, we have about 70 plus patents that have already been filed and granted. Another 20 would be filed this year. So for us, the technology moat is extremely important. Along with that, what we are looking for is, what is the founder skill set, what is his experience in the domain that they're working in, and are they bringing in complementary skill sets? If one is a technology guy, is the other guy, does he have commercial acumen, etc. Because typically at the stage at which we come in, like you as well, Abhishek, there is hardly any revenue, hardly any revenue model validation. Sometimes there is product market fit, sometimes there is not. So it is more about the people that you back and the kind of skill sets that they bring to the table, at the stage at which we come in. uh, and we are happy to put in 1 million, 1.5 million, maybe 2 million also, to kind of get it to a stage where some of those metrics that an upstream investor, typical Series A investor would look at, can kind of get fulfilled. So the way we look at it is, how much money are you looking to raise for the next 18 to 24 months, and where will this get you with respect to both revenue model validation and product market fit? Because beyond our stage, which is the seed stage or a pre-series A stage, the next guy is actually looking at traction. When it's a series B, series A, series B, etc. Even if it is not revenue traction, they are at least looking at customer traction. They are looking at, for example, if it's a cybersecurity company, they are not saying what revenue you have, but they're saying how many endpoints are you deployed in, for example. And that's where, some of how efficiently are you able to manage your funnel. Has the funnel velocity kind of improved over the last couple of quarters, etc. So those are the kind of things that next series of investors would start to ask for, when they are writing a $3-5 million check. The other thing that we've done differently is also, for example, because we come in at a stage where some of these guys are TRL4, TRL5, etc. When we're talking about the hardware end of it, we've tried to keep $2.50 to every dollar we put in the first round, as dry powder, so that we can continue to support these companies as they scale up, as they go to next levels of technology evolution, product market fit, etc. And we are happy to work with co-investors. Out of the 27 companies we've done, 25 would be co-investments, 17, 18 we would have led, 7, 8 we would have participated with somebody else like yourselves. And the intent is to get like-minded people on board from day one, so that when deeper pools of capital are required, then in most cases we can internally wrestle up till they get to a stage where they are externally fundable. So that's how we've tried to kind of mitigate some of these challenges we've seen on the deep tech side.
Wonderful. No, thanks, Girish. I've kind of noted few things and we'll bring it up later. Rima, since you're back, I'll jump right away. Everybody knows you. Entrepreneurs are always very curious to learn how do deep tech, deep science investors actually evaluate their company. And I had kind of broken it down in three ways. So one is, what are those things that you folks look at, while evaluating some of those deep science companies? Two is, are there anything extra or different when you're looking at the deep tech and the deep science companies, apart from the regular, the TAMs and so on and so forth? And third is, when they go for the upstream capital, how do you see them being getting evaluated? Because a lot of times, revenue buildup takes certain amount of time. There is a gestation to maturity of the product and commercializing it, productization of the same. So these were three things, and I would love to have your inputs.
For more we talk about technology and investments, we still seem to be having throat struggles. So I hope you guys can hear me this time. I'm going to start breaking up.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. So I'll focus more while we do both deep science and technologies, since I heard a little bit of what YourNest does. In terms, we do have common in terms from a technology, software and hardware technologies. I would focus more on the biotech side because that I think was not covered. So let me focus on that one. So one is kind of investments that when we do in biotech kind of things, whether it's health tech across climate or battery technologies and stuff around that, we would break this down not just based on one is of course obviously the TAM part of it, worst case. But the other things that you will need to look at is one, what's happening globally, especially around IP-based companies. It is not just what's happening in India, but what's happening globally. And it's not just in terms of the same technology that we are talking about, but are there other parts and other related things that's happening globally in the same space becomes very, very relevant. Because one has to also take a call on which technology might prevail in the long run. So some of those evaluations as to whether you might be the best in what you do, but you might just be sideswept by something that's happening new. So it becomes very, very important to look at what's happening globally in terms of the technologies that are being used to solve the same problem case. And in many cases, the fact that cost by itself is not the most driving factor in many of these globally. So to say that we would do it cheaper here in India is not really the solution. So you need to be looking at the fact that how can we create a global scale company with the best technology, and to say that it's not about being cheaper, second best in India or the third best globally would not work. So it becomes very important from that perspective to look at what's evaluable, because you could just get sideswept by both in India and outside India. So that's one thing. Second thing is the fact that it takes much, much longer, no doubt. So revenue may not always be the criteria for us to use. So we always look at it from a milestone perspective. Milestones is what we look at from what is a milestone that you need to reach, and who are the investors who can come in at that milestone. So it becomes important for us to look at the next stage of investors from a company perspective is what is the money that's required to reach the next milestone rather than the revenue target, and what would be the next stage of investors looking for. The third thing that we look for is the fact that are there, beyond one use case, what is the other use cases that you would look at? Because in the case of science-led areas, when you are investing into something and developing a particular solution, it's possible that that particular solution might can be addressed from different ways, and your solution may not be the best one. So is there more platform solutions? Are there other use cases that you can come up with? That also becomes an important, multiple use cases becomes one of the critical things that we look at while we while we are evaluating that. The next thing that we would look at more from is the fact that the investor base, also especially in some of the areas that we have invested in, is not just Indian investors, but global investors. So we have to look at who are the global investors, especially around the biotech cases and all that we have invested in. We've actually got a lot more interest from global investors. And so what is it that they are looking for, and what are they investing into becomes even more important. So we look at more the global landscape of those investors at scale. And whether the entrepreneurs are appreciating that, that's the other thing that, the fact that there's going to be global investors, and hence what are their global ambitions becomes very, very critical. Those I would say is a fact, top things that we would look for when we are looking at the spaces that we invest in addition to what Sunil was mentioning earlier. Because those are, those are ones we look for. This is more from a biotech space.
Few key elements, which anyways, I think Girish and both you, Rema, brought out, even in our case, like customer validation, especially, how to justify the upstream. There has been a progress. I think very interesting element you bring out is how do you break it into few mini nuggets of milestones rather than just being fixated on the revenue, which all of us know, takes time, right? In kind of a deep tech startup. And absolutely, I think for us, one of the things that seem to have worked is if we can identify a global partner early on, that's better, right? From an investor standpoint, because a lot of these are it's not just about the capital; they also need that market access, and sometimes it just becomes a little bit easier. One of the interesting things that we are also seeing, though I don't think I can still generalize it, but it seems some spaces don't mind having strategic investors, early on. And by that, what I mean is that financial investors don't see that as a hindrance, or they don't seem to have that stigma, especially when you're doing with global peers, and so on and so forth. But completely, valid. I think that kind of takes me to the next question. And as VCs, of course, we we see few wins, we see few losses, and then a lot of sort of middle performing companies. I think if I have to ask you both, and Rima, maybe, or maybe Girish, you can start. Like one successful company that you guys have had in your portfolio, and more importantly, what successful. Of course, apart from the product and the problem that they're solving, are there certain traits that one can pick up in their journeys, as a best practices?
Sure. So let me talk about a company called Exponent Energy here. They are basically they have created a very interesting battery pack and battery charging infrastructure, which is able to use the standard lithium ion battery and pump it to 100% charge within less than 30 minutes. And so when we came in, they were still at a prototype stage, and they were able to demonstrate this in a lab level. But today they are already commercialized. They've already raised multiple rounds of capital. They already have exclusive tie-ups with three-wheeler manufacturers, and their use case was very very sharply defined in terms of they were going after three-wheeler last mile intracity logistics. And with that sharp definition of the use case, today they have pretty much every large three-wheeler manufacturer who has an electric version is their client, because this is a commercial asset, right? And the driver wants to milk the asset 12-14 hours a day, rather than leave the vehicle charged on the on the base side for 6 hours, 8 hours for the battery to get fully charged. Today he can start at 8 in the morning, do his 6 hour of 150 kilometers, go to a docking station, while his rickshaw is being loaded, he has his lunch, and in 30 minutes the battery is fully charged and is good for another 6 hours. So it's not only the largeness of the opportunity here, but it's also the identification of the problem to solve for. The same problem can, for example, be today leveraged in any commercial asset, whether it's an intercity bus or it's an intercity large truck logistics, etc., etc. I think to get to that first level of customer validation, where you have people who are paying you for the kind of product that you built out and taken to the market, that gives a completely different flavor to the opportunity. And this investment has been less than 2 years for us. So, and they are today they're raising money at the 30x multiple of what we came in the first round, which is in less than 24 months. you know s- Success is not valuation here. Success is the identification of a very sharp niche where their product is applicable, where there is an applicability of what the technology that they've built out, and then use that as a leaping board into taking this to other segments of the market. So that, to my mind, is a great example of how some of the how we've seen some of our companies evolve within the portfolio.
Wonderful. Thanks, Girish. Rima, your 2 cents, please.
Sure. So a great company that Girish spoke about. I would want to add and talk about a company called String Bio that we invested in. This is a synthetic biology platform that we invested in when they were just in a pilot phase that we had invested in about 3 years back. And what we saw at that point of time is that globally there has been one other large player who has done this, right? And so the question was that one was that. Second was that there was a whole lot of other synthetic biology players were also getting into the market. One was we had to look at as a fact, what was this company different? How was this company different from that other technology that was out there? And for us, the key thing that was differentiated was one, of course, the fact that they were being developed in India. So it was a fraction of the cost of what it would take to develop in the US and Europe as well. The other part of it is the fact that the solution that came out of the developed market was something where you needed large plants of $100 million plus to set the plant up. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention about the fact that Stick Biology as a platform. What they do is that they convert GHGs into proteins, which can then go into different use cases. So one was the fact that they could set up actually in a very decentralized manner, where you could set up a plant at a fraction of a cost, but for a couple of $1 million, you would be able to set up a plant. What then actually happened was the fact that it opened up a large market. Then your source could be, you could move the solution to the source of the feed versus the fact having to move the feed to the solution, to the plant, which was a big breakthrough. That was one. The second thing that we looked for was the fact that would they have multiple use cases that they could come up with, and was this team something that could actually look at creating those multiples? And the team to us was the fact was what made a huge difference, because they were fixated not on the fact that we could convert this, but how could you value add and create the value added solutions. And so they were able to come up with solutions, whether it was for animal feed, or whether it was biostimulants, or food for human beings, or synthetic biology, specialty chemicals that we could do. So they were more looking at how do we value add and create value for this company, value added products that they could come up with. So that was one thing. And the second thing that team focused on was on the fact that one is the fact at the end of the day, you might have a climate solution, which is really the best in the world. But at the same time, you have to be able to compete on product, on what are the alternate things that's available. And so to focus on that, the getting the unit economics right, so that you can actually get to that scale globally, was what they focused on, right? And so they had the whole techno-commercial capabilities, which is very critical in science-led companies, because you have scientists who are very good at the science of what they do, but to get those commercial capabilities is a gap that we see, and why we don't see many of the scientific achievements actually come to market. Right? And this company actually has been able to do that as well. While we invested in them 3 years back when they were in the lab in Bangalore, today they are setting up a large plant in Australia with one of the largest oil majors in Australia called Woodside Energy. And they're setting up their own plant outside Bangalore. And they have various pilots happening with the L'Oreals of the world and the large agri-chemicals around the world as well. So it's been a huge journey for us, and the valuation jump may have been like 20x plus, and not because of the fact that the milestones changed. So from the fact that they could do a pilot of 100 liters to 1,000 liters to now setting up a large plant, that's the progression that we have seen that they've been able to take and bring the products to the market. So I think just being milestone driven, looking at the large use cases, getting the unit economics, the techno commercials in place has been one of the biggest things that's worked for this company and for us.
To learn, from this whole deep tech and deep science journey. Just very quickly, sort of add to what you and Girish said. I think in our limited experience, what we've also seen that some of the guys who work very closely with the partners, global partners early on, they are able to kind of extract the industry benchmarks, and that becomes very, very critical, because you need something to show that you're building something really disruptive and not incremental, which is the vision and ambition of any deep tech, right? The two is, I think, the nature of India funding has been such that deep tech, poor deep tech entrepreneurs also had to manage themselves within what the quantums are allowed for, let's say, a SaaS company or a consumer tech company, right? Whereas all of us, we know, a simple tape out would take anywhere between $8 to $10 million if it's been happening in US or somewhere else, right? Which has definitely brought in this very interesting angle of frugal engineering, like you briefly talked about, Rema. Of course, I see Avinash here, so we are running out of time. Like I said, a lot to discuss, but I think just to close it, what I feel excited about, what we feel excited about, is that deep tech is no more remained a buzzword. I think it's become a real, driving force and the engine for this country. And when all of us, when you see people are actually putting money, might, and their own resources and bandwidth to make it happen, I think that speaks volumes. So feel extremely excited about it. Thanks, Rema. Thanks, Girish. Avinash, over to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks
for the panel. The great discussion. In the interest of time, I think we'll move to the next panel. Thanks.